Come one, come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. Come one, come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. Give praises to Jehovah, from whom all blessing and knowledge will flow. Blessing and knowledge will flow. The Village Talk Show, dedicating to empowering the community to live a healthy, safe, and financially capable life, helping each one of us in realizing our dream at any age, any point, starting from today, day. Success. Come one, come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. Come one, come all to learn and grow. Welcome to the Village Talk Show. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. We discuss what people need to know, empowering them to learn and grow. Success is not spoken, it is done. Success is done. Come on now. The Village Talk Show. Talk Show. The Village Talk Show.
And gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us right here on the Village Radio Talk Show. Andre, I can't hear myself, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. Check with your headset. All right. So I'm just following up. It's a very, very exciting day. It's the first week in July. And so first of all, I have to give honor to God. Andre, the screen. I have to give honor to God for granting me another Saturday to be with you out there in Village Land. So excited about that. This week marks 2 years, 8 months since my prognosis. So I'm excited to know that. Yes, indeed, July 4th would be the exact date. So I just want to give God thanks, right? I want to give God thanks. I want to give everybody thanks, give the prayers out there. And thank you so much, all of you who have been watching us over the years on the Village Radio Talk Show, watching, listening, sharing. So special shout out to a lot of our viewers, our listeners, and everybody else that's out there. So that's really exciting. So first and foremost, just want to tell you, this is the Village Radio Talk Show. I am Roderick Daly, your host. Our co-hostess is on screen, Dr. Joanne Bryant, following in right now with our co-host, John Sampson. So just know that the Village Radio Talk Show is dedicated to empowering the community to live a healthy, safe, and financially capable life through education, helping each one of us in realizing our dreams at any age, any point, starting from today. Success is not just spoken, it is done. What are you doing to be successful? So let me say shout out to both of our producers, Andre and Sophia, making sure that they know that we appreciate the work that they're doing behind the screens, to ensure that we have a lot of information, a lot of topics to discuss with you. So, Dr. Bryant, ladies first. Ladies before the ugly gentleman.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Roger, talk about yourself. Don't talk about me. Thank you.
How you know I was talking about you? What?
You said ugly gentleman, so plural.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, got you. I said man, but it's okay. Go ahead. You're gonna have to go back to the videotape and do our audio review. Go ahead, Doc.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Enjoying this beautiful, beautiful Thursday. Very excited. It's bittersweet because it's actually a year today since um, I'm not going to start on a somber note. But yes, it's a great day.
Start. Go ahead. You're talking. You have the floor.
A year today since, I'm thinking about the president of Haiti who got assassinated last year, this time, a year ago. And till, you know, no progress still with that, and still no president in Haiti. So it is disappointing, but that is the time that we're in, unfortunately.
All right.
And
That
the
is
rest of
true.
the Caribbean people need to, if we're working as a Caribbean, and I always say this, we're supposed to be united, not separated. So that's all. That's my little 2 cents. Hey, John, how are you today?
I am blessed, highly favored today on this beautiful day on the 7th day of July, the year 2022.
Yeah.
And looking forward to what we're going to talk about today. But what I want to talk about
Go ahead.
is the oil prices. Gas is coming down a couple of cents.
Yeah, our favorite spot, John, is at 479. Wait. Can I say something? Can I have the privilege to say something for a minute?
Hell no, but go ahead, man.
Last week we weren't on air live, and it was my wife's birthday.
Yeah.
Specifically, last week, Thursday, was her birthday.
Big up to Miss Daly. Big up to Miss Daly.
So I just want to make sure that this week, right away, before I forget anything else, I want to make sure that I wish her a happy birthday, happy belated birthday. And thank you, everybody, for the Facebook wishes for her birthday. And I'm also excited because this week starts my first week as the chair of the community board. So
Well, like you said, 2 years, you survived the doctor's prognosis. Your wife has, thank God for her. She had to deal with your big mouth for the last how many years that you've been married and together. Thank God it's her and not us, ladies and
well,
gentlemen.
it can't be us.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
It ain't us.
Amen.
Thank God it's her and not you.
Because I can only take you. I can only take you these 2 hours, brother. I don't know how she does it, boy.
So a special shout out to her and happy birthday. Dealing with your husband.
Yeah.
Dealing with his ass, definitely.
Going back to the topic you talked, which you started out with, Dr. Brian, not only has Haiti not have a full and fair election, but they also have a series of turmoil that is happening as well over the last year, including the kidnapping, among other things. Right?
Kidnapping, the gun issues, similar to gun issues is everywhere. The Caribbean, it's international.
Hold on. Gun issues are everywhere, but my villagers, the law has just been overturned by the Supreme Court. Please, those who have no issues, please go register for your firearm.
I am going to go. John, I need your help to fill out my forms. All right.
No problem. I will help you. Please go fill out that application.
I am going to go fill out my application.
Please, Dr. Bryant, you need to fill out an application also. Because you know what?
Wait, did you hear her answer? Did you hear her answer?
She said, That means she's going to do it. Don't worry about it. But you know
Monet, thank you, Monet. Monet says she's going to go get. Monet said,
Big Mo, you got to get your gun, Big Mo.
Right.
But I don't know about Big Mo because Big Mo might use it.
Right. All right, Big Mo.
But you know what? But Roger, if we can just digress for 1 second. We are not sheltered from any sort of gun violence. When you look at what happened in the Illinois suburb, Highland Park, Illinois suburb, of what transpired there.
It-
4th of July parade. And I just think about that that young toddler, 2 years old, who will grow up as an orphan because this individual took his parents and 5 other individuals. For what reason, I don't know. But again, you know, I wonder what these Republicans are waiting for. But
John,
I
you know,
just,
there's something I want to add to what you're saying. I believe personally that the parents of that child, that young man, they need to be charged with some infraction as well. And I'm going to tell you why. Right? They got this young man, they signed off on the gun for him to be able to get this gun, which was, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it was legal. It was legal. They signed off on him getting the gun, knowing that he has specifically expressed, right, that he wanted to kill people and kill himself. Right? And the parents signed off on a gun for a 21-year-old who has expressed straight mental component. And this is why the laws need to change, John. Right? The parents need to be held accountable for those 7 families who are without a loved one. And that child.
You know, Roger, you know what? I hate to say it, but I do agree with you on that topic, because having not constructive, but having actual knowledge of the fragile mental state that their son is in, to go ahead and sponsor or co-sign with him buying such a firearm, not even a firearm, a high-powered capacity rifle, AR-15. It is unfathomable. I don't know what they were thinking, you know, and there is a sense of responsibility that they need. They should have had, knowing they had actual knowledge of the instability of their son's mental state.
And it's the same thing with the young man who ended up killing all those children at the school. You know, there was signs. There was clearly signs that there. So no one red flagged both of these incidents, and that is concerning, because both, you know, if you mention that you're going to murder your family, or you mention you're going to go and shoot up a school, that's an automatic red flag. It should be an automatic sign. No gun registry should not be allowed to purchase anything of that sort. But unfortunately, both were Caucasian. If it was different, it would have been red flag over here.
Hey, Doc, are you saying?
Yes, I am saying it.
So say it then, Doc. Don't beat around the bush.
The law is not fair. It is not equal. It is not equal. The same treatment and the same requirement and the same. If it was someone of African American race or Hispanic who actually mirrored any form of mental illness, they would have arrested the person. They would have tracked them down. They would have followed their social media. But somehow these two individuals have the same issues, but nobody on law enforcement, nobody in the community, no one red flagged this, not the family, nothing. And they were allowed to go and purchase because, hey, they're
I disagree.
To go and purchase. Well, you could agree, you could disagree, but it is the truth.
I'm going to tell you why I disagree.
Go ahead.
My former role was AP of safety. Besides being a school administrator, one of my job titles for the last umpteenth years until I retired was AP of safety.
That's why there was such a high crime rate in the schools.
Not in my building. Not in my building.
AP of safety.
Not in my building. Those numbers went down.
AP of safety.
If a student exclaimed certain behaviors, like what you're explaining now, it is red flag.
Okay. So not every
I-
state is the same.
Wait, hold on. But I want to add something to your point too, right? I'm not totally in disagreement in what you're saying, and I don't think it's more about race than region, right? I think it's more about region. Like in New York City, why is it that New York City does not have mass shootings in the last 40 years since I've been in this country? We've only had 3 that I've known about in the entire
I can tell you,
state.
Roger. I
Four.
can tell you why. You know why?
Why?
Because you don't know if the person next to you got a gun. So you know, if you're gonna shoot me, I'm gonna put my gun out and shoot you.
Yeah.
That's why.
Right. And so I do think, though, that what Mitch McConnell said was a cop out. Right, that it's about the people with no AR-15. Did you? The Robert Cremo said, right, in the early interviews, that he was planning. He saw another parade and he wanted to empty his last 60 rounds. You can't do that with a revolver. You fire 6 shots and you got to reload, right? But when the AR-57, like John was saying, you fire 60 rounds at one point because it's for mass destruction, right? Why do you need it for? What you don't even need that for hunting.
Right.
You need a hunting rifle for hunting, which fires 1 or 2 shots. So I don't see the need for it. And Mitch McConnell's answer to me is a cop out. So I when I'm saying I don't know, it's unfortunate, Joanne, or fortunate, depending on how you want to look at it, that a lot of these mass murderers are white. Right? They're young white males.
Between the ages of 18 to 21.
Right? Yeah, a little higher.
But they don't want to put an age restriction to 21 on those who
18
can
to 25, but majority between 18 to 21, right? Or even younger, right? Columbine, I think they were 17 or around that age. So it's important that the answer, John and Joanne, in my mind, is not a cop-out answer. If you're 18 or 21, you cannot have access to anything more than a hunting rifle, if that's the case. Second, you have to go through a very strong mental component in looking at your high school records. Now, everybody's like, oh, they're 18. Once you're 18, the records. No, because people say dumb crap. And what they're going to follow through on, because now they're 18 and say, now you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I said because I know my record is sealed. And you can't refer back to it. So to me, those are highly problematic.
Well, definitely a problem. And what's happening in New York is not getting any better either.
What do you know? Which aspect?
Well, I know what the mayor is doing, but unfortunately, we're still having shootings on a daily. You turn on the TV on any given moment. 3 people got shot last night. 3 people got murdered last night in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, and Queens. It's like, when will this come to an end?
Unfortunately, it's not. It's not. Killings are going to happen. Homicide happen all over the world. And I think, Joanne, the better question is, when can we slow it? At what point are we going to slow it down? Slow it down. The Bronx, I just read a statistic the other day. Bronx County is number 1 in New York City, in New York State, with the amount of homicides. 179 homicides per 1 million people.
4th of July, 50-something people got shot.
Yeah, and 3 people got killed on July 4th weekend.
So it's You know, what's sad is parents are afraid, really, really afraid of sending their kids to um, summer school or to take public transportation.
You're killing me with this conspiracy theory thing. Though.
It's not conspiracy.
You're killing me. You're like,
No, no, no.
you know what? You're
I have
fooling
facts.
media.
Stop.
You're
No,
fooling
no, no,
media.
no.
You're like,
No,
let me just build on people's fears.
That is not true.
Yeah,
It is
right.
reality. With all that you're seeing as a parent, you don't know how many parents are afraid to send their children on public transportation.
Okay, so I'm gonna add something to it. Right? I'm gonna add something to it.
Go ahead, add.
People use this as their justification for their fears. That's what it is. So people were
No.
already intimidated about doing certain things. Now, oh, that's why I told you my kids can't take the train. That's why my kids can't go to Stuyvesant High School because it's too far. That's why I'm not sending my kids to Bronx Side.
Oh,
That's
right.
why I rather send my kid to some crappy school around the corner because they're close to home, not realizing that those crappy schools are where the violence are happening. But you feel so much safer because your child's right there.
Roderick,
Yes.
you're wrong. How many parents have you spoken to recently who actually allow middle school kids actually who are allowing their kids to get on public transportation like that? You have less and less parents who are opting into doing that unless they drive their kids.
Okay. So I can honestly tell you that
Mhm.
the numbers have not single changed from a single parent. So the parents who baby their kids take their kids to school.
That's not true.
Again, let me say it one more time. The parents who baby their kids.
Listeners, can you actually put in your information into the chat? If it's meant for it to happen, it's going to happen anyway.
Thank you. Yes, that is true.
I don't know what she was referring to. Good evening. Good evening.
All right.
Angela.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to the village, and thank you for joining us. We're just talking about the gun violence, a couple of things, But once you are an overprotective parent, you're looking for justification to
What we need
rationalize.
overprotected parents.
Overprotective parents is a parent who's like, oh, my kids can't go to this person's house. My kids can't go to the movies on their own.
And that's important. No. Slow down. I don't want my child all over the place because
It's not all over the place, right? It's not all of. I didn't say that child should go all over the place, but you have parents who justify all of the reason. My kids can't go to the park and play. My kids can't do that.
I wonder why some parents are afraid to send their kids to go to the park.
Because of the same, because one, they're not going, right? And again, especially Black parents, right? Especially Black parents. The closer my child is to me, is the more I feel that my child is safer.
Safety. With what's happening now,
it's absolutely not true. It's actually the opposite. Because what happens is the freedom, the child lacks the freedom, and then the child is going to go through some of the topics we talk about today. The child runs away. The child builds resentment. And any opportunity, okay, so let's think about this. Goes back to some of the things I talk about. Which race is number one for high school dropouts? Number one.
The human race.
exactly.
I like the answer, John. Right? Which race is percentage-wise highest for committing a crime?
The human race.
Which race at the highest, right, is for, right? Which race or ethnic group is number one for pregnancies? Birth,
Jamaicans.
not birth.
You said Jamaican.
Jamaicans.
Right? Not birth. Not birth.
You tried to get
Not birth. Having children. well, not abortion, not abortion. White race is number one for having abortion, right? Teenagers.
I don't
All right.
know. I stay
Okay.
out.
So sometimes when we ask these questions, we need to
No,
know.
you asked that question.
Well, I know the answer.
You asked that
Right?
question.
Which
Okay.
is number one for college dropout?
Okay, so you know what it is.
Because there's a reason for it.
Let's ask our expert who will be coming on. Let's do that.
All right, we'll
Let's
ask
do that.
So
Yeah.
let's move on to Boris Johnson. Right? Boris Johnson, Prime Minister. Andre feel like we should. Well, he should. He was a big supporter of Donald Trump on the Conservative Party. No, wait, hold on. No, wait. What I'm saying, right? And John, we spoke about this earlier. Andre's like, don't talk about Bush, but I'm like, in terms of world leadership, it's important because one, he came to power in 2019, right? Under the Conservative Party, just like Trump. He's now here's the interesting thing. He's losing out in England and some of the stuff now that Joe Biden is losing out on. One of them is fuel prices, right? So the conservative wing is losing on fuel prices, John, and so is the what they call conservative, what they call the left wing, right? The Democrats, right? So the left and the right are both losing out. Political liberals, that's the word, thank you, are now losing out both on the same thing. So they lost the prime minister along with other things, right? So what do you think? You think Joe Biden is going to go, John? Think he's going to be a one-term president?
Absolutely not. I mean, Joe Biden's going to run for re-election. Who do we got in the bench? I mean, he's going to run for re-election, my friend.
Right? But it wouldn't be Kamala. But I mean, Trump said that he's planning on running in 2014. So
Let me tell you something. Trump can plan all he wants to run, but when they get finished with this
January
6th hearings, Trump is going to be so radioactive that Republicans are not going to run away. They're going to sprint away from him.
But you know, he didn't do so badly though in the midterm primaries.
I mean, that's it, because those people. But we're talking about. Remember, that's the primaries. Okay, fine, we can do well in the primaries. But the big issue is the general election, where you got a lot of these independents who come out and vote, and his antics have turned off a lot of independents. His antics have really. I mean, he has blood on his hands with respect to the January 6th coup. He ignited it. And what's interesting is all these individuals who sought pardons, you know, so it's just going to be mind blowing once you get all the information out about the damage that Trump did while in office.
Yeah, and he did some real
He did some real grimy shit, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
he did grimy stuff, man.
And his own parties like throwing him under the bus. You know, another topic we have, Brittany Griner just pled guilty. I'm like, and I was reading the charges, and it's like, yo, it's 10 years.
I think she was pressured to do it, to plead guilty.
I think so too.
Because the thing is, there was no American camera. CNN wasn't there in order to witness. You know, there was no statement from her after. So I think it was more pressure. Hey, if you plead guilty, you'll leave or whatever. Something to that extent. I don't think.
And then they said the charges can bring up to 10 years.
Yeah. So.
Right.
I think it's fraudulent.
I don't think it's fraudulent. I think she did plead guilty, but I do think you're right. She was coerced. You know, and it's bad.
You saw the writing on the wall. If I'm going to go to trial, she knew she was going to lose. Let me plead guilty. Let me see if I can move this ball a lot faster.
That could be it, and that's probably what they told her. You remember a couple of years, many years ago, John, or Joanne, one of you. I don't remember which one of the Asian countries it was where they killed somebody for with the marijuana, and it was against the law, and they gave him, either they killed him or they locked him up for years. I think it was Taiwan,
Right.
or one of those countries over there. Yeah, I think it would expedite release.
Yeah.
She would have been found guilty anyway. Yeah, you're right, Eddie. I think she would have been. I think so. I do think she would have been found guilty.
Exactly.
No matter what.
She would have been found guilty.
My thing is, I feel like by her pleading guilty, when you what I've learned with the law is when you plead guilty to something, it's almost irrevocable, right? You would have to show that you pled guilty under duress, right? In order for you to get away with overturning a guilty plea, right? That's right. That, to me, I don't know, but that's what I feel like that could happen a lot.
Right.
Right. So I wonder what they're going to give her. 10 years. What they're going to give her 10 years, or what was the offer?
If she went to trial, she would have got 10 years.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think they're going to work it out.
Right. I think they're going to give her time served, because what's she been there? What, 3 months now, since February? About February she was in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and she didn't actually have any marijuana. She had residue. Right. She had the residue of the marijuana. And what I was looking at, like, I'm like, yo, dog, she's 6'10", 6'11". I'm like, poor baby. Couple of things real quick. One, couple of guilty pleas, right? Not guilty pleas, couple of sentences. We want to talk about, right? I want to talk about like Derek Chauvin. What? Oh, Andrea's like, yo, get off. Yes, let's bring our guest on. Andrea's like, yo, shut up, bring our guest on. Let's do that.
Andre.
Right.
Good evening, Mr. James. How are you? Can you
How
hear
is
us?
everyone?
Great. So please introduce yourself to our listeners. Thank you for coming on, and the floor is yours.
How are you? My name is James Farr. I work for an nonprofit organization called 100 Suits for 100 Men, based in Laurelton, Queens, as an outreach supervisor. So I have a couple of questions, guys, that I would like to bring to the panel, and it's dealing with our children. Basically, something that's been troubling me is that it's been a growing trend with a lot of the children running away from home, particularly colored children, which I find is a lot different. Usually we hear about Caucasian children doing this, but lately it's been growing amongst colored children, teenagers. And so that is the first question I'd like to throw out there and see what you guys think about that.
Wait, repeat that question again.
Why are so many young Black boys and girls, teenagers, running away from home?
Because they're a bunch of badasses.
What?
I'm just trying. Right?
Well,
And-
there's some truth to that.
Right. There's some bunch of badasses. Them a look man, them a look woman. Right. They want to go hang out with friends.
No.
The parents, wait. The parents are overprotective, and therefore they want some
It
freedom.
had nothing to overprotect
Right.
the parents.
So they want to be free.
Disagree.
When I ran away from home
disagree.
because I wanted to be free of my mama and my papa. But in all seriousness, all of that though, all kidding aside, there are some truth to that, right? There are some truth to that. Like a lot of young kids want certain level of freedom. However, right, we have to look at the negative side as well, right? So in my purview, if you're going to ask me that question, so along with those answers I just gave, you also have, unfortunately, about the two situations just happened, right? Ghislaine Maxwell and R. Kelly, right? So
Right.
you look at sex trafficking and the use of young people for inappropriate behaviors, run away from home to join gangs, right? Because of the need that they want to feel a sense of belonging where they might not get it from home, right? So if you're going to ask me those, I'm going to say when you look at it from all angles. I don't know the percentage of how many kids run away for this reason. And then you also have some other mental component as well, right? Where you have kids that run away because mentally they don't have the capacity.
You know what? I'm not sure if she is listening right now, where you have 9 and 10-year-olds that's running away. And that's the scary thing. Have you, Mr. James, please tell us about your experience so far with dealing with children.
Wait. Before you do that, can you go back to I want you to go back to your answer, though. I gave you hours. What is your answer to that question before you go back to the experience?
Well,
What
I
is,
believe
in your experience, why are they running away?
Well, I believe it's several dynamics that play a part here. One is there can be some blame put on the parents, right? But then we have to look at the conditions in which the parents are held accountable, but at the same time restrained from actually raising their children the way they want to by government, right? So at the same time,
Where's John? James.
Yes.
When our co-hosts come back, he'll be here in a minute. As soon as he sits down,
right?
Because that's his pet peeve.
Right.
As soon as here he comes.
That's his pet peeve.
Sits down, I want you to repeat that comment. Right. Sit down, John. James has something to tell you about. Hold on.
Wow, I sound like I'm getting ready to get in trouble, Joanne.
No. It's a good comment. Go ahead.
Pet
Guys,
peeve.
you're gonna get John riled up. That's why I want you to make it. Go ahead. You can hear? Go ahead, James. He's listening.
Okay, well, based on what I see and what I do understand, right? We can blame some of the runaway issues on the parents, if you would like, by saying that they're either overprotective or, you know what I'm saying, some of the households are domestically violent or whatever the issue may be. But the parents are restrained. They don't have the same autonomy that my parents had when I was growing up. There's too many laws that are created and invoked that's actually keeping the parents from raising their children the way that they want to. We're raising our children based on someone else's theory, which is the timeout theory that Caucasians created. Rather than, I got a belt put on my ass. Excuse the language, you know what I mean? But basically, that was the truth.
Hold on, James. Yeah, John, what's your response to the belt put on your backside?
We don't hear you.
Wait, I can't hear you. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear
you. James, let me tell you, my father always said, he said something. This is one thing he said. He said, America has too much freedom. Yes. And either you allow me to raise my child the way I know how to, or you will allow the criminal justice systems to raise my children and my child. And at that point in time, they will be subjected to, as we say, it's more of an involuntary servitude for what they will have them to perform. So I believe, as they said, spare the rod, spoil the child. I believe at some point in time there should be some sort of punishment, corporal punishment, because I think at this point in time where we are in society is we have lost our moral compass.
Yes,
and we have not allowed the family to implement to implement the morality that they grew up with. But however, we have to understand this: children are raising children.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that morality. They don't, and then they're excessive when it comes to the punishment.
Wait, hold on, John. Are you able to hear him? Because I can't even hear him.
Can you hear me?
I can hear
perfectly well. Was he
Yeah.
too low? I'm saying, was he too low or was he?
No, he was fine.
No,
It's
was
the
fine.
first time we actually hear John clear.
Okay, all right,
Why
because
you
I couldn't hear him.
why you talking crap, doctor? So you know,
I,
James,
I'm
I
inclined.
would agree.
I'm inclined.
I would
I'm
agree
inclined
with
to
you.
agree to some point with John, but at the
I would
same
agree
time,
with
I'm not
you.
all there.
But at sometimes some parents are excessive in the punishment that they administer to their children. It's
Yeah,
I
we have a
excessive,
agree.
lot of that. We have a
you
lot
know,
of that.
and you know, which I don't understand. But there has to be a balance. But in some instances, there's no balance. You know, I believe in timeout. Is there an instance where there should be timeout? You know, yeah,
Yes.
there should be in instances with a timeout. But sometimes there are instances when you need to crack that behind. I agree with that also. But
And
go ahead.
And no, I'm just saying it goes back to what James was saying. Like, part of the reason that we're having some of these issues is there's a cultural
Differences.
difference
Culture disconnect.
Right.
between how
We can't raise our children the same way that white people raise their children. They have different cultural practices than we have, right? Their children are not under the same social dynamics in which our children lack. Education institution, economic, finances, whatever the case may be, we're held at a degenerate level, right? So they have a lot more to work with, right? I agree with you. Now, I have a son who I've raised without putting one hand on. I've never touched my son. I've forbidden his mother to do so, not forbidden him by, forcing her, but by talking to her. So it works. It can work. However, the parents today don't have that autonomy. And when we do think about parenting, when my parents didn't raise me as a parent and trying to be my friend at the same time. There was a clear, concise dictation that said, I'm child, that's adult, that's parent.
It's
Today,
and that is
today they're
cloud.
raising them as you're my homie, you're my friend, and I'm your mother and I'm your father. And this clouds a child's judgment because they don't know. I mean, they're growing and developing, but they don't know the difference when mommy is being mommy and when mommy is being my friend.
You confuse
And so,
confusion.
yeah, it is confusing to them because you ask them to be a friend. You're actually trying to be a friend. And my mother and my father are my friends. They are my friends, but they didn't have to tell me they're my friends. You see what I'm saying? They didn't sit down, smoke marijuana with me, drink with me, party with me. And so that's one dynamic with the parents today. And it's always been younger teenage women raising children as far back as slavery and even before then. Because if you go back to our African history, you'll see that the men took on women at the age of 13, 14 years old, soon as they were able to have their menstruation, right? So that's not the issue. The moral compass is the issue. That's a big issue right there. I agree with that 100%. But I'm dealing with children. I'm dealing with children that don't come from broken households. I'm dealing with children who families have economic value. Their mothers, their fathers are working, right? And so they are providing. They're not abusing these children. For the most part, they are not abusing these children. Tomorrow, I'm going to sit at a hospital with a lady who has stage 4 cancer. She is dying. Her daughter has ran away 3 times. In this household, there is no issue whatsoever. But she's dying.
I wanted to touch on something that you're talking about because I want to bring it all together, right? I want to go back to the comment when parents want to be their children's, and I think your co-guest is here as well, so I'm going to bring him on screen as well. Right. So hello, Pastor Matthew. How are you doing? I'm Roger
Good
from
evening,
the Village, the host. Here, Dr. Bryant, our co-hostess, and John Sampson, our co-host. And thank you for welcome to the Village Radio Talk Show.
And
it's a pleasure being here.
James Farr. This is James Farr. So
they
never met.
Oh, they've never met. Okay, I didn't know that. All right. So one of the things that you find is that when you have a certain structured discipline in your house, and your kids are not your best friends, and you don't make comments like, I'm your best friend. You're my best friend. No. We shouldn't be socializing in the same circle. When what happens sometimes is now what I find is that these young people, they get even more emotional about simple things.
Yes.
Why you couldn't buy me these pair of shoes? I'm going to run away.
Yes.
Oh, I hate you. I hate you. Why you couldn't do this? I do that. And that right? And then they get out there and see something different, and sometimes get so caught up outside. And one of the things that we want to talk about is like the drugs, is the gang, is the sex trafficking, is the prostitution that we're talking about that happened. And now they can't come back home. Because I've seen that too.
Yes.
You mentioned something about the young lady who ran away 3 times and her mom is in the hospital dying of cancer. So that child is dealing with, she's running away from the situation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Running away from saying goodbye to mom, running away with dealing with mom being sick. That's a lot to take on at a very young age. And the thing is the support. What support is being provided for a child who is dealing with a parent who's in the hospital? So who's raising this child right now?
And at the same time, this young lady never had a father in her life whatsoever, right? She has older sisters, she has aunts, she has a mother. So she does have a support system. Outside of that, she's not a really bad, she's not what I would call a bad child, right? But at the same time, this young lady, like you said, she is dealing with that. So much so that she texts a guy. We caught one of the texts, and it's a guy who's trying to pimp her out. And so she's calling him daddy, this and that and all that. But in the text, she's saying they're plotting on how to kill the mother.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? And the mother has read all of this. Still, she goes out there. That's a mother. She's nurturing. She wants her daughter back. Push that aside, everything, right? But this last runaway right here, I believe, has pushed her over the edge to her dying bed right now, to where she's at right now. And the daughter is absent. Gone.
How old? You said the daughter was 9? It's 9?
16 years old. She just turned 16.
Years old. And we were just talking about before you came on, when we talk about what happened in Highland Park, where, we see these things, and because of the age difference, and once it turned 18, all of this high school, all this stuff is sealed off, and sometimes you don't have access to a lot of this information later on. But before I continue with you, Mr. Farr, let me get to Pastor Matthew first. Let me give him a minute to introduce himself and welcome him to the Village Radio Talk Show.
It's a
Thank you.
pleasure. I just want to thank God for the privilege of being invited. I know Dr. Bryant, we have worked together in the Department of Education. And I would like to say I'm a member of the 67 Precinct Clergy Council, the God Squad. I am the one who focuses specifically on what is called Operation Ceasefire. It's a partnership with the clergy and NYPD to visit formerly incarcerated young men and young women, to introduce them to alternatives to violence, job opportunities, job training, education opportunities, counseling, housing relocation, if they want to move out, because sometimes if they stay in that part of the hood, they can't leave the gang. So we have been doing this, and I also do trainings, training rabbis and imams and other pastors. My main sort of advice to all these clergymen is to get down from the steeple and walk with the people. Leave the benches and go down in the trenches.
Yeah.
So I'm a street man. I work in the street a lot, and I've been able to intercept homicides. I can speak. Someone here is from Bed-Stuy, right? Somebody here from Bed-Stuy?
No.
Listen, listen, I want to something. I was over in Bed-Stuy, and I walked from Fulton Street in the Spencer Place, and I sat there, and while I was talking to two young men, a guy came and shot a shotgun and blasted the kid right next to me. His name was
Matthews. Hold on one second. Somebody's phone, I think it is.
Yeah, somebody's phone was buzzing.
You're muted.
to folks who are involved in gangs. I operate with that particular community, leading them in the right direction. Now, I want to say something about the family, and this is what I'm going to say. I baptized a gang leader some time ago, and he told me that when they were recruiting members into the gang, they'll ask the elementary school kids to bring their friends, the middle school kids to bring their friends, the high school kids to bring their friends, and some who in college to bring their friends. They were mandated to bring people to recruit other members into the gang. And he told me that one of the basic questions was, why do you want to join the gang? And he said more often than not, the response was, we're looking for a family.
There you go.
So I'm saying that young people, the youth are looking for a family. And often when we're trying to find out what the problem is, we have to listen to the youth, because we might have initiatives and we're scratching where it doesn't itch. We're scratching where it doesn't itch because we have to listen to them. What are your problems? And this is one of the problems we have with families and the schools and the community. Often initiatives are being planned, but we're not listening to the young people. And this is why you have to create forums where we can have the youth to speak. And whatever initiatives we are taking, they'll only be relevant if they are in response to the felt needs, the relevant needs of the young people. So when you talk about a family, we're talking about something that's going through rapid changes. The family as it is today is not what it was 10, 15 years ago. And we have to understand that with the changes of the family in terms of how the social media and the peer associations impact upon the family, we have to look at how we can make adjustments and create a dynamic that is more powerful than social media and more powerful than the gangs. And this is where this discussion is very important. That we have to look at how we can create a new dynamic. And this is what I'm saying. We got to look at how parents can understand.
Wait, I don't know if you can hear me.
Now you have a child who comes home, and
Pastor Matthew,
it's a single parent.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Okay, all right. John had a question, because we want to tie in a lot of what you're talking about with what James is talking about, because James is looking at the runaways, right?
Yes.
And one of the comments that we just started out with, his first question was, why are kids running away, especially African American children who are running away? So
not just African American children.
Yeah.
But
right.
Black,
so we want to tie
colored children. I mean, they're from Caribbean island. They're from all over. Their families have moved there. They've lived here a while. But what is clearly happening across the board, and what I am seeing, is a growing number of children are doing it, even threatening their parents to do this. I mean, these kids are not stupid. First of all, they do know law. They understand the limits of their parents. Their parents cannot hit them. They tell their parents that. They know that their parents can't do anything that's abusive, because they threaten to call the cops. Many of them have done that, right? Some of these kids are actually telling their parents, I'm not going to school today. I'm not doing this today. They have become, in turn, the parent. And the kid and the parent is becoming the child, taking the orders, because the parent doesn't really know what to do. They want to beat that ass, pardon me, Pastor, but they can't. They are actually limited on the consequences that they can invoke on their own children. But now, when we go back to looking at gangs, New York City is famously known, started off with gangs. When I grew up, there were always gangs. That's nothing new under the sun. A lot of the dynamics have changed. A lot of things have changed in our environment, right? But what particularly changed, if I looked at it now, and this is from talking to them, these kids have nowhere to go outside the household, right? They really don't. They have no community centers. I had community centers. They have no after-school programs that the centers open up. I had that growing up, right? They have no parenting outside the household as far as community watch groups and stuff like that. That's because the adults allow the broken structure to take place and then put it back together. So we really don't have community benefits for our children. But yet, we know what these children need. We have people in office who can give us the things that they need. But nobody is swiping the pen to open up a center for the kids.
They're bored. And that's what we're finding. Yes. Many of them are bored. And
I'm finding kids in warehouses, abandoned warehouses, abandoned buildings. They're taking the lodge there as a clubhouse. They have nowhere to go. They have nothing to do. You're giving them a phone, and then you're going about your business. And you come home and you complain about your parenting. What are you crying for? What are you doing this? I have to tell parents, sometimes you got to revisit being when you was a teenager. Don't act like that child doesn't have problems. Because these teenagers have their own little social problems as well. The same way we did when we were young teenagers. Whether it was fights, disagreements, whatever the case may be. But I had adults there to talk to. I had adults that watch me when they see me doing something, reprimanded me or threatened to tell my parents. There was these were.
But James, we don't have that no more, James.
That's
We
the
don't
We
have
don't
that.
have any of that. But we are the adults, and we can put this back in place. And I need to know, and this is for the adults. I need to understand why isn't it in place when we have so many people involved with whether it's with the police department, the board of education. I sit down with the mayor. I sit down with district councils. But why don't we have these things? And why do the white communities have it?
May I say something?
Why do they have it and we don't have it?
Okay, here's my point. Now there are many variables involved. We talking about the home, we talking about the school, the community, we're talking about the social media. There are many variables. But one of the things I want to focus on is the schools. I believe that what has happened is that school has become boring because they have taken out what is called authentic education. Now,
Yes.
I've worked in the Department of Education for 27 years. I worked in tough schools. I worked in Jefferson when we had a shooting, 3 students shot and killed in the school within a 3-month period. But we actually spearheaded some things to turn that school around and to make it a better place. Now, when you take away the music from the school program, you take away the culinary arts, you take away woodwork, you take away basic electricity. Now, these things were done back in the middle school when I came into the Department of Education. I can remember in middle school, we had woodwork. When you take away authentic education connects the school to the real world. So during the summertime, they can do an apprenticeship in an auto mechanic shop. They can do, I'm not talking about extracurricular, I'm talking about co-curricular programs. Right. So when you take away the music, you take away the culinary arts, you take away some of the other things, it makes education boring. So what we did at Jefferson, we created a program where even after school, we had the students stay by, we gave them a snack, we did homework assistance with them, then we did counseling with them against drugs and gangs and peer pressure and stuff like that. And then we broke them off into music, into double dutch, into chess, into karate. And some of these children didn't want to go home because the school became a comfort zone. I'm saying that the schools have a part to play also. And they have to bring back the authenticity into the educational program. That's one area. There are many other areas, but I'm focusing on this right now. I'm focusing on the authenticity of education, why students are being bored in school, why they're dropping out of school, why they are not actually, being involved in the educational process. Secondly, education has to be a family value. Parents have to understand, they have to buy into it also. So there are many other things. I just want to touch these 2 areas, authenticity and family involvement.
So I want to go also back to the point where you mentioned the young lady who ran away, who has mom in the hospital, who last runaway is now trying to plot murder. So where's the counseling that's going on for this young lady? Where is the support system that's happening? And where is the intervention part taking place? And I noticed a couple of comments, and I want to go back to Mr. Cameron said, I wouldn't say they took them away. The real issue is finding teachers to teach those courses. I want to add to that. It's not only finding teachers to teach these courses, it's I would say it's a balance. If your school can afford it, it continues. And if you have the right people to teach it, it's going to continue. But there's some schools.
You also need parents with a backbone that says this is what we want in our education system. Amen. And I don't see parents stepping up to the podium or coming to these meetings saying, listen, this is what we need in our school.
James,
I've went to I've been to some of these Caucasian schools, listen, and I've sat down in their meetings and I watched them make demands to their politicians, and they get what they want. But I'm not seeing the same thing amongst people of color.
Listen, James, I want to add something to what you're saying and what both of you are saying. And I'm going to detract from what Jermaine is saying. I do believe that because of the lack of push, Dr. Brian hate when I say this, but I say the number one problem with school is parents.
I agree.
Right? It's the number one problem because parents have the ability to drive the child's education, but they leave everything up to the school. So I'm going to agree that parents are not fighting.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me just get back to what he was saying. So back in the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, there was a pay scale for people to teach other factors in school. Now they have the core 4: English, math, science.
Just give me 1 minute, please.
Right?
Continue. I'll be right back.
Right. So you have the core 4, lunch. That's 5 periods. In the next 2 to 3 periods, right? You have to incorporate every other component of school. That means your foreign language, your shop, your health, your technology. So in 3 periods, you have to now incorporate all of these things. There's no emphasis on additional things to allow students to have that access, right? So that creates a problem for me. So the push with the families, the push with education and the educational system, all of those things have to come into play, because one of the issues that we have young people, and when James come back could also address, we have young people running away from home. We have young people who are unhappy, right? So they are joining the gangs. They are joining those things that you were saying. And John, you had a comment.
My comment is basically there's not only a buy-in from the parents. It's true when they say it takes a village to raise a child, and you need all the components. You need parents. You need business people. You need clergy. You need the seniors. Everyone has to have a buy-in to the enhancement of our children. And that's what it is. It's our level of commitment and involvement that we're willing to put in when it comes to our children. That's all it is. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. Raise the issues. Parents, people in our business, people in our communities. You know, we need to work collectively together in order to give them the opportunity to excel, not only excel, but to be successful in their acceleration.
I have to agree with you, but I also I'm thinking about a conversation that I had with another parent just last night. Her child started, 5th grader started summer school. He, day 1, he's like, okay, I don't want to go no more. I'm bored. So many of the things that they went, and he's not going to summer school just because, hey, he failed anything. He's going to summer school to try to socialize and to do something fun. But if it's the same old, like Roderick mentioned, social studies, science, math, reading, they don't want to do that. They want to learn something new, something real life application. And that's what's missing, that disconnect. Not every school is teaching the same thing. Not every school is teaching music. Certain schools have advantages. Now, speaking to this parent, having 8 and 9-year-olds run away because they don't want to go to school anymore. So now we're dealing with kids who are so used to being online and being on social media and being, technology, that going back into the classroom is an adjustment. Then going back into the classroom and doing something that they might not be that great in, and then being pushed.
Right.
That's great. But the thing is, what else?
Right.
We want to pull them in so that they're not running away. And the reason why we're having this conversation is it's summertime. It's summertime, and there is a problem, especially with our girls and boys running away, running into prostitution, running away as young as 8, 9 years old. Why are they running away at such a young age? That is alarming. And yes, I do agree with you. Parents need to be parents, and some parents need to learn how to be parents. Because some of our young parents...
Yeah, that's right.
Pastor Matthew, I want to go back to something that Dr. Bryant and John and a couple of our, by the way, those things are you are live, and so people are chiming in as you're speaking. So we appreciate everyone out there at the Village Radio Talk Show listening, because it does take a village for the education piece. So anytime you see a comment up there that you might want to address, just pause us and just let us know that you want to address the comment as well. Make any additional comments. I want to touch on something that both of my co-hosts have talked about, and you've touched on it, but it kind of like we skipped over it a little bit. You talk about gang, right? And wanted families. How does it look at a runaway level that Dr. Bryant is talking about, that Mr. Farr is talking about, that Mr. Sampson is talking about, in terms of wanted to be part of gang and moving away from true education, right? Because whereas I think go back, I think a couple comments back.
Mm-hmm. We didn't get a chance to read
Claudette Spence comment. We've grown up hearing education the key to success, but too many parents really don't know what is involved in getting that education. They can't choose if they don't have knowledge base. And then go back to Mr. Cameron's comment right before that. Parents must hold leaders of schools accountable. So I want to tie all of these things in to remove our children from running away, getting involved with gangs, and getting caught up with a lot of the negative things of society that they will not get out of. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they think they know everything, but in reality, they don't.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get back to a very important idea, and I always would reiterate this. Often, we are trying to look at solutions, and we're trying to identify a problem, but we're not listening to the people themselves. I think we have to begin to listen to the youth, because what is happening is that often they in interacting with many of the young people, they will tell you, listen, nobody's listening to me. We have to listen to the young people, and we have to do it in a way where we can show them that we are there for them, that we are there to help them. Even if what they ask for is unreasonable, in our minds, we got to realize where they are and how we can get them to where they should be, and do it in a way that will actually enhance their self-esteem. Now, in many communities, we have a rite of passage. I've been to bar mitzvah as a musician, playing for the Jewish community with a steel pan and stuff like that. In our community, presently, the rite of passage is gang membership. And with many of the youth, if I have a gun, I'm a man, and if I have a gun with a body count, I'm a superman. So we have to look at what we can do in our communities, and I believe that it calls for a lot of mentoring. We have to reach beyond our present circle and reach out as much as possible to reach out to the young people around us. Now, I know it takes a lot to do it, but I believe there should be village elders. This is how I look at it, who can interact with the youth on the street. Where I live, all the youth on the street know me. I reach out to them, I talk to them, I never pass without stopping, interacting with them. And because of this, they come to me with problems. I'm able to hear them. When I worked in the Department of Education, in Thomas Jefferson High School, I never ate lunch in the teacher's cafeteria. I ate lunch with the students. I was able to understand where they are. So I think we have to have a forum. We need to find a way where we can listen. Parents have to listen to their children. And in the schools, the guidance counselors and the teachers have to listen to children. We have to see how we can be real in making responses or creating the right processes for them so that they can find the kind of interactive help that they need. So I think one of the problems we have is that we're not listening to the youth sufficiently.
One second, Pastor Matthews. I just want to the ground rule that I'm gonna tell all of us. This topic is very important, and I know that we have a lot to say. So I'm going to remind everybody, just give yourself an internal clock, just to give like a 1 minute piece, so that both like everybody can get an opportunity to speak. Because this is very important, and I love the audience participation. Right? It shows. I think Pastor Matthews, I think that's your phone. Oh, that's James. That's your phone. Okay. So I want to go back. Both of you are part of two separate organizations: 67 Precinct Clergy Council, the God Squad, and also 100 Suits. Right. Let's start with you, James. Tell us about your interaction with and by the way, you're muted, right? Tell us about your interaction with young people and what do you see as ways to improve on them staying home and staying out of gangs. Stop running away. Stop putting themselves in harm's way. And I'm going to ask you the same question to Pastor Matthews, but I'm going to start with Mr. Farr.
That's a hard question because well, it does start with what you said. The premises should be on listening because communication is crucial in any aspect, in any relationship. And so with most of them, it's that their parents aren't paying attention. Parents, I feel, are so caught up in their traditional standards, how they were raised. And I don't think we take into consideration that there's been an evolution. You know what I'm saying? Things have changed. We're dealing with technology. We're dealing with a whole new mindset of how kids are being raised by the social media rather than more by the parents. But the parents aren't really paying attention to that. They're working, and I can't blame them. They're trying to provide for their households. And sometimes it seems like I gotta say, they don't listen. They don't pay attention. They just want their kids to do right. And the kids don't have any other outlet. So in my experience, we use our office as a center, right? So the kids come there after school, they stay there. Right now they're at the office. We get a chance to sit down, talk to them. We give them a platform to speak. That's something that their parents don't have the leisure to do, or don't take the time to do. So I would go back to what you said, the listening. You have to understand, in order to understand what's wrong or what issues are involved in any misbehavior, you have to sit down and let the child talk. Don't act like you know it all, because we don't know it all. We're living in a different time. I'm sorry. Even as adults, as an adult, I make errors. I make mistakes. And I've already experienced a lot of things, right? And so these children don't have an outlet. They really don't have an outlet. In most cases, we can say there's broken families. The father's not there. The mother's not there. Both parents are not in the household. And if both parents are in the household, again, there's no real listening. There's no real communication. So
you know what? I'm gonna jump in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump into that. I think a couple of weeks ago, I was having dinner with my son and my daughter, and we were discussing.
Did you cook?
I always cook.
Okay. That's why you're at the restaurant with the kids.
Anyway, I was having dinner with them, and I, for me, being in the education field, I feel I'm a great listener. I'm listening to them. Hey, I know what they need. I don't need to, I know what you have to do. You got to go to school. You got to do this. You got to stay. And then my kids were like, Mommy, you don't get it. It's not the same as it was, in regards to it safety wise. They're like, if somebody don't like you, it's not the same as, hey, you just ignore them or whatever. No, Mommy. You could get shot if you ignore them. You could get stabbed, or bigger than that. And I'm like, no, just walk away from this. They're like, no, it's not like that, because then they put the threats on social media. So it's a whole. I thought I understood, but it's not until that moment that I'm like, wait a minute. Wait. They're putting your information on social media so other people could actually come in to join. So it's no longer a fair fight that you could just walk away from. And they're like, Mommy, you're living back then. Your approach is not going to work with that. And I'm like, wow, you truly, I thought I understood. Hey,
Yes.
I'm an educator. I'm in the field. I'm seeing these, but it's not the same. And that was a wake up call for me to say, okay, I have to stop. I have to pay more attention, and I have to try to not fit in, but to understand where they're coming from. And that was the disconnect because being a parent, oh, we know it all. We know, hey, I know what's right for you. I know what's good for you. But
That was then.
You know,
Yeah.
I promised myself I was not going to interrupt, but I am going to interrupt.
What you gonna say?
All of that is not true.
What's not true?
I'm going to tell you up front, all of that is not true.
What's not true?
Violence in schools, crimes. When I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. I grew up in Brownsville, the heart of Brownsville and Canarsie.
Okay.
I went to BRC on Linden Boulevard, the mother gas station. I got 3 dudes come up to me, took my sneakers, threw it, and tried to fight me. I went home with a black eye.
You got robbed.
No, I didn't get robbed. Right? No, I didn't get, because I had my shoes. They didn't take it. They took it and, whatever. The point that I'm making is it is no different.
It is different.
No, well, hold on.
It's
It is different. It is
Wait,
very
hold on.
different.
Let me finish the
It's
thought. Let me
different.
finish the thought for a second. Right? It is no different in terms of the level of violence. Right? Because I have friends today. I'm talking about in that time that will be gone tomorrow. Between 1988 and 1992, we had roughly about 3,000 murders. We don't see that kind of murder in New York City anymore.
No, you don't.
We don't see the level of gang violence in New York City anymore. The reality of the situation is now the bullying, I believe, is greater now than it was then.
But that perpetuates more violence.
Right,
That
but the
perpetuates
act of
more
violence, however, right? My barber got 2 shots in his head from selling marijuana right on Avenue. I live in Brownsville, grew up in Canarsie area. So the violence I'm talking about where kids are beating each other up in school. I think one of the things that we have to start looking at is how did we deal, because we survived. All 4 of us on 1, 2, 3, 4.
Not the same.
Hold on, wait. Listen to what I'm saying. You can't say it's not the same. Because the reason why you cannot say it's not the same is the person who lost somebody in the 80s, somebody who got beat up in the 80s, got access to drugs in the 80s, right? Who got AIDS, needles, all those things back in the 80s and 90s. You can't say it's not the same because they have now the approach is different. Because now you can reach people, like you were saying, on social media. We didn't have that back then.
But now the gun violence is much higher.
No, it's not. No, it is
where
not.
younger children are getting gun.
No, I'm telling you, no, it's not. I had junior high school coming through with guns.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
Can I cut in just for a second?
Right.
Dr. Bryant, I'm going to agree with him at one point here that the gun violence isn't as high as it was back then. And I'm going to agree with him on that because it isn't really. It's being perpetuated more through social media. And that's only because we have gentrification happening in our communities. As many kids that died in the 80s and 90s, if they had to put that on the radio, we would have looked like a war zone was going on in New York City, as opposed to now. But again, that's the only part I can agree with you on. There is a total different dynamic on how these kids are dealing with each other. For one, we had gangs, but we had dirty ones and all the bikers and all that. But for the most part, we weren't joining those gangs. A lot of those were Hispanic gangs and Caucasian gangs, not black gangs, right? The gangs that I remember more or less protected the community, right? We're not talking about Decepticons and stuff like that, because that would be groups going against groups, and that was sporadic.
How you know about the Deceps? What do you know about the Deceps and the Voltrons?
I used to be I used to be with the low lights. I used to bully. Right there, brother.
That's what I'm
Polo
talking
down,
about.
head to toe, brother. I would give you the whole dynamics, the 80s and 90s. I grew up there. You know what I mean? So I know from Bedford-Stuyvesant, Crown Heights, East New York, Brownsville, Bronx, Harlem, upstate New York, I've been around. I done it, right? And so, but what I do see and what I do notice is gangs perpetuate things different, because now we have a high rate of gangs amongst ourselves in our communities that are black, colored, right? And so now this social media thing right here, getting on Instagram, Facebook, when these kids call each other out and they put your information on there, that's an invite for their colleagues to get involved in that. Doesn't matter if he's upstate. Doesn't matter if he goes to Boys and Girls and you go to Eastern District. If I'm not handling that business, my people gonna handle that business. That's a big difference from back then, right there alone.
I agree. Dr. Bryant said something, and I just want to reiterate it. In all that we're saying, we need to understand that many children are being socialized by the media. You know, the family socialization sometimes isn't as impactful because of social media. And I think what Dr. Brand was saying is, by listening to her children, she got to understand. And this is why I'm saying that we got to have quality time with children so we can hear what they're saying, because their reality may not be our reality. And we have to buy into what they're saying. So I look at three important things. Number one, focused attention. Children like to have their parents give them attention, and sometimes we don't spend time with them. Quality time is very important. Focused attention. Number two, unconditional love. And often children, even if they make a mistake, sometimes we chase them away by how we deal with them. We don't often know how to de-escalate a situation, the tone of voice we use, the body language. So the home can actually create a culture of, it can create a culture of, dysfunctional culture, because we're not listening to each other. So focused attention is important. Quality time. I believe families, as much as possible, should have a family night. If your children like basketball, take them to a basketball game. We have to look at how we can buy into them to keep them bounded together. Focused attention, unconditional love is important also.
I think it's the best.
You can chase them away when they make a mistake.
Example, you know what I mean? Us right here on this panel. We're adults. We're all adults here, right? And we have a hard time listening to each other. So, I mean, when it comes to a child sitting down and trying to explain, like Dr. Bryan explained, her kids are sitting there saying, "Mom, it's not the same." And then they have to explain what is different about it for her to pay attention and say, "Well, hold on, let me take a step back. Instead of being a parent, let me be a listener here and see what's going on, what's going on." Right? Because if adults can't sit down and communicate with each other well, then I really can't see how they can do any better with a child.
You know, I think that's a very good point. And I wanted, while we were talking about it and while you guys were talking, I was thinking about, and I just said, for me, back in Brownsville and seeing all of these things and what made us survive. And sometimes as parents, we make this comment, which I hate, and I hated it as an educator when parents told me, no, they're just kids, they'll grow out of it. Right? They're just kids, they'll grow out of it. Or label the kid, that's a bad kid, just being a bad kid, right? Well, you know what? Certain habits they're not innate, right? They're habits. So habits are something that you develop. It's not instinctual.
That's right. Yeah, I agree. And James, I think.
Can't hear you, John.
I agree. You hear me?
Yeah, John left first.
Perfect.
And my thing is, things have really come full circle, and it really goes towards we have lost. There's lack of discipline. There's lack of respect.
That's right.
Their moral compass has been eroded by, as one would say, the Instagram, social media has been eroded. And what it really boils down to is, when we grew up, there were certain rules and certain morals that we lived by in the street, you know, and they no longer exist. If you had a beef with somebody from a rival gang, if that individual is with their mother or walking their child, or or relative to school, they were off limits.
That's right.
There were a area in which, a territory in which things were off limits. Neutral ground, basketball courts. So it was neutral because, Pastor, there was that level of respect that we had. There was that moral compass that we had, although it was the street. But this was the street guidelines and rules that existed. Now,
but that was established by the adults, the parents. Exactly. They established those tenements. That was established by them. What are we doing today? Why have we dropped the mantle? Why are we failing the children? I am not going to just look at children and say that these children are wrong when I don't see the parents doing what they need to do. And I'm saying we're failing these kids.
But the whole issue is, one, you got parents raising parents. That whole, and you don't know the impact, and it's true, the impact that the crack epidemic had to our community. The fathers went away for long periods of time for possessing a vial of crack cocaine as opposed to having 10 kilos of cocaine. They were then raised by a parent or raised by a grandparent or raised by an extended family that didn't have time to lay down the rules and regulations and the laws that existed. Basically, they grew up in the street and were raised by the street. But by that time, all of us were gone. Either we were incarcerated or we were no longer around to spread this. And if you look at the mob, one of the mob's golden rules was we do not engage with law enforcement. Right. And the reason is because you would bring holy hell on what they were doing. But as you're seeing, as they got older, times changed, younger ones got involved, all of a sudden you have this engagement with the police. So it really goes back to that void that was created. And if you think about it, James, and you think about it, Pastor, the void that was created when you talk about Reagan's
presidency.
Reagan's presidency was crime. Crime was the number one. Drugs. They went after them heavy. Rockefeller drug laws, the long-term sentences that were issued. Yeah. So just think about it. We were no longer on the streets no more. We weren't there.
Yeah, but you know what, John? I'm in my 50s now. I know the history. History has taught me one thing through education. It's a blueprint. We can keep going back. We can keep reviewing it. We can keep pointing to it, saying that's the problem. This is where it started at. We know if it's a hole in the street, right?
They'll fix
it. Do you fill the hole, or do you allow the hole to continue to be there? I am tired.
What neighborhood you from, brother?
And there you go. And you know what? It didn't matter if we filled it with dirt or they filled it with cement or tar. That hole has to be filled in order for that street to be used.
Right.
We have come to the point in time, I believe, that we have to look at that blueprint and say, yo, listen, this is a void here. This void can no longer exist. It has to be filled now. It has to, because now the next 2 generations, 3 generations after that are being affected so much that they themselves are not safe in school. They're not safe at the home. They don't feel security at the home. This is why they're leaving home. I believe there's no security there for them. They don't have any place in this world. These kids are fighting to find a space, a place for themselves. And I enjoy sitting down, having these discussions, but I need action. I really do. Because I don't think we have another 10 years or another generation to allow this to continue. And now we have prominent people in prominent places that can do things. We need to move on this. We need to motivate the community. We need to put us right here. We know the things that are missing. The Black Panthers started off with 1 person, brother. Then 2 people. And then now, even though they were ostracized and demonized, they're known as the first public health institution that was ever established in any community today, acknowledged by the government today. about public health. Let's move towards getting our people fixed. Let's fix these problems. Let's fill this hole, because these kids are suffering. They are dying, and the next generation that they're going to raise is going to get worse. And we are going to be cut out the loophole. There is no respect for us because they don't see us doing anything to protect them. There is no respect for us. And that's because we're not doing anything. We have a responsibility. We're failing. Bottom line.
May I say something here?
Of course.
So the God Squad, the 67th Precinct Clergy Council, we have actually reached out to other precincts, and we have become like a model nationally, because we have connection with Chicago and LA and other places. What we have done, we have what is called a Flatbush Leadership Academy. So we have young people, we bring them in on weekends, and we have mentors working with them. We also hired 100 of them with a grant. We had about 100 young people working last summer, giving out PPEs on the street. And actually we had them going out with us to various areas. Then along with that, we visit the hotspots. We on Friday nights, we identify hotspots, and we have some former gangsters. Sean Duke from GMAC, Gangsters Making Astronomical Community Changes. We link up with GMAC and some of the other groups. We visit the hotspots, and we're able to interact with the young men and young women in those neighborhoods. And we have found it has been very effective in stemming like Juve morning shootings. They just actually went down a lot since we started this program.
Yes,
so I'm saying that there are things that we can do in our communities, but we need men and women. And I'm happy for you, Brother James, because I realized that you, when I looked at the information, you are involved in the community. The 100 men, with suits and stuff like that, and you also have a focus on working in your neighborhood. What I like to say is that I'm willing to link with you in anything that can really bring some substance to what you're doing. I'll be glad to be there with you, man, and so we can work and impact on our community.
Likewise, anybody who's moving in that direction, I don't care what are you doing. I don't care if you're not associated with anybody. If you're moving for the betterment and development of our people, our children, listen, I'm with you all the way. I will bring the weight of God with me if I could. You understand what I'm saying? I need to see something happen. I am tired of sitting down with politicians. I've sat down with your mayor. I've sat down with your district leaders. I sit down with these people. I've sat in the room with your president while my boss shakes his hand. But I am not seeing any change. And I am tired of voicing it. I'll never get tired of going out there in the streets.
So James, I hear the venting, right? I hear the venting.
Mm-hmm.
We can all vent. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes. Let's move now.
Right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Tell us, the God Squad, which, I work directly with Minister Williams, John Williams, and Gifford Monroe's and Bishop Hardin, right? Pastor Matthew, I'll just give you those names out there and I'm also in the 6th, 7th precinct, I am the community board chairperson. I am the chair of that board as well, right? I want to go back, and I understand that you're doing specific, and I was going back. I don't know if you know about this, James, but the young man, Cade Ashton Tyler Lewis, who was killed a few months ago. Mm-hmm. He was shot in the car, mm-hmm. and the God Squad was there. The 6th, 7th precinct was there. I want us to be specific. So I give you all this background to say, let's get to specifics.
Yes.
What specifically, if you had whatever you needed, I was going to throw money out there, but it might not be money, right? If you had whatever you needed, what specifically are you looking for to stop the kids running away, the trafficking, the kids getting into violence, addressing our young people? What specifically do you need?
Right now, I will begin with giving them their own space. That's the first thing I would do. They need a place to congregate. They need a place where they can get proper guidance, but at the same time, grow and develop. Not a place that's totally forced under our rules. They need the same leisure and autonomy I had growing up as a teenager. but with the proper guidance. That's the first place I would start at.
Similar to community center? Would you say
let's open up these community centers and these projects? Why are they closed? Why are they being sold off? Project centers being sold off to another district. Why is that happening? Why are these schools closing? There's no after-school programs where the gym was used as a community center. And like the brother was saying, some of the things that they can learn, the pastor was saying, the entrepreneurship programs that could be developed there.
Financial literacy.
Let's start with giving these kids a space. And that starts with us sitting down and telling these people who are in power, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you this is what you're going to do in my community.
Yep.
You're going to give my kid these, you're going to open that center. You're not going to sell that center off night after night for a party and it's closed 9 months out of the year.
Say that
What
again.
is it here for? They can't even go to the park after dusk, brother. But yet, in a white community, the parks are open all night.
James, I want to share. I want to share a very sad story with you. So a couple of years ago, in Brooklyn, right in area called Rugby, Pastor, you would know this area right by Tilden and East 48th Street. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
The community came together and said, we want a community center. Would you believe that the residents on the block voted it down? They said, we don't want it here. It's going to take up space. So now you have the own community fighting against the community. And now they moved it over to what we used to call Vanderveer back in the days. I think they call it Flatbush Gardens now. Now they want to move. And now you have another fight. So now you're asking for a community center. And now two opportunities. Jumaane Williams, thank you, put $5.something million into building this community center. They don't want it. They shot it down. But yet still you're wondering why the kids are on the
They don't have to build them. They're already there.
No, but I'm just showing you something. No, I hear you. But I'm just showing you something. The investment in it. Right? It's there. Because there's none in my district. There are no community centers in my district.
Right.
Right? So that's why they said let's recognize the area and build it there. I want to go to you, Pastor Matthew, and talking about what is it for you? What do you want? What more do you want? What, like I asked James, he's talking about open up the centers. Let's get access to our schools. Let them open 24 hours a day. Because I heard some people say that. What do you want? Because you were talking about the violence and amongst the young people and get them off the street and get them vocation. What do you want? What's ideal for you?
I think one of the important areas is that we need to realize, as you said earlier, it takes a whole village.
Yes.
That's critical. So we're looking at involvement across the board. I think all the community-based organizations should be involved, not just one or two individuals. I think this is where we need to reach out and join together to amalgamate so that we can really work together. There's so many variables. We have the political, we have the economic, we have the legal aspects, we have the family aspect. You see, we have the educational aspect, we have the cultural aspect. You know, there are so many different variables. So, you know, and this is why I'm saying there's a complexity in this. We can't sit down and think there's one short solution. It's a complex issue with many variables, but we need to have persons who can come together and we can target these various areas and give practical responses. So I think what we need to have is more community-based involvement. I think this is where community-based organizations need to try to understand and reach out together, because what is happening is impacting upon them. They're getting robbed. Stores are getting robbed. You know, we've seen a lot of stuff happen all around us. Gangs on the street, you know, bullets firing sometimes. So we need to have more involvement on the community level. And I think it creates, within all these variables, it creates a need for coming together to have some discussions and to come up with practical solutions. Now, I want to tell you what I am doing personally. This is besides the God Squad and everything. My wife and I, we have a music school. It's bringing back the authenticity I mentioned that the school has taken away. We have to restore that authenticity. If you can restore the authenticity in the church and in the community-based organizations, bringing back the music and the culinary arts and other things like that, we're going to see a lot of things happening. So my thing is we need to restore the authenticity that the school has kicked out, the music and the culinary arts and the auto mechanics. We got to restore it in our churches, in our community-based organizations, in our community settings, so that we can have the youth engaged and involved to build their self-esteem and give them a sense of direction for the present and the future. I think that's what is critical. So I do the after-school stuff, my wife and I, and we also have a summer program. We focus a lot on music. I do the steel pan. I used to tour with the steel bands, different parts of the world. Before I became a pastor, I was a panist. I toured different parts of the world with the steel orchestras. So we do steel band. We also do piano. My wife is the ABRSM, Associated Board of the Royal School of Music. She's one of the teachers. We are the Brooklyn Center for the ABRSM. So I'm saying that we are bringing back the authenticity. And I'm saying that if we can restore the authenticity that was kicked out of the school, it will help a lot of young people to find a meaningful life and a new sense of identity.
I noticed a couple of comments that was brought up. Felicia has one. I think communities are afraid that the centers will draw in unwanted hangout spots. They need to learn skills that will be career orientated, not just hangout spots, which is true. Because the thing is, not everybody's going to college. Not everybody want to do the same thing. In order to keep the kids from being bored and in order for them from getting distracted from going into the gangs and into violence, we need to find what they like and draw on that, build on that. And there was another person who actually put a comment up in regards to we have skills. I think it was Dr. Can you go back? Yes, agreed. We have so many gifts within the village. Passing the gifts on matter. So this comment right there, passing the gifts off matter, that part where we had community, where we were a village, where we looked out for each other, where we taught each other, passing, in traditions, Caribbean culture, there is tradition passed on. That's no longer there. We have to go back to that. Teaching. Why should I have to pay for skills that I don't have time to learn? But my children want to learn how to some of them want to learn about culinary. Some of them want to learn how to sew. Some of them want to learn how electrical. So these are things that we have to be able to offer. And guess what? I might not know it. John might have some skills. Roderick might have some skills.
Thank you.
Don't be afraid to share it.
I think
that's what they did when they had community watch groups and the parents got together. They were all able to add something, throw something on the table, and it benefited the kids across the board. I had a grown man about a week ago tell me that he's from the Caribbean islands. And he said, one of the reasons that he came to America was when he used to look at television back in the 80s, 70s, 70s and all that. He used to see how we interacted as a community. He's seen community there. And now he's here years later as an adult. He's like, what happened?
I think James, the pastor, and everybody, just to come full circle, and full circle is this: there needs to be a community discussion with our youth.
Let's have it.
We need to have a community and find out what they want.
Yes.
We always want to know what adults, what we think they need. What do they want?
Yes.
What do they want and what do they actually need? Tell us that. The gangs too. Sit down and meet with the gangs. What do y'all want to prevent all this violence? What do y'all want? We're in a position now where it can happen.
Yes.
So I think that's the plan of action. We should call a community youth summit throughout the 5 boroughs in New York City. Bring all the youth in. Bring all the gangs in. We could do the youth. We could do the gangs. Bring all the leaders in. Tell me what you want. You say we don't hear you.
Open the doors. Open the doors. Let them sit down. Let's do that. Let's sit down with the parents. Let's sit down with them.
That's my call to action.
You know what? I'm gonna take you on your call to action. I'm gonna step to that. Let's make it happen this month.
Now, I want to also add that this will actually bring into focus things that will need space and funding. Yes. So we have to think on the long haul. We're asking them, but if we don't really we call them together, and they articulate their concerns and their needs, and then we just not able to meet them. So we have to be able to think that we're not just only going to hear them, but we're going to respond. And responding will call for resources, personal resources, financial resources, skills resources, planning and implementation. So we have to plan with that in mind, that we're not going to only hear, but we respond. But responding calls for resources.
Next steps.
Some with substance, something that's tangible, something that they know they could believe in, something that they could be a part of, something that we all work together on. And I agree. Yeah. This is a good place to start at right here, because it affects all dynamics. It takes care of the education department. It takes care of the space department. We bring back community. And then we can start putting back moral compass and all the other traditional standards, and then let the children grow and develop out of that. But right now we need to do something. And I agree.
So to my special guests, I want to thank you guys for coming on this evening. And we have a call to action. We have our plan, and we look forward to working with you both and all our villagers out here who are listening to the show tonight. We're going to ask for your participation in this, because this is our call to action. As Mr. Farr said, and also Pastor said, it's about action. And once we have this meeting, it's all about making sure we have the resources to fulfill their request. They're going to make requests of us. We want to make sure that we have those resources to fill those requests. So once again, on behalf of we want
to say that yes, definitely I'm willing to work with anybody. Dr. Brian knows me how to contact me. Please give my information. Anybody.
I was actually going to ask you for both of you just to give your information so Andre can put it up on the screen. So people who are going back to YouTube and watching the show over will have your contact information. So start with you, Mr. Farr. Give us your information so Andre can put it up, so all our YouTubers can come back and watch it. And also for both of you, this is aired live and is replayed on YouTube. You could actually just go back and collect it at the Village Radio Talk Show. Go ahead, Mr. Farr.
You want me to put it in chat or verbally?
No, just talk it.
Okay, J Farr. That's lowercase letters J Farr. That's JFARR. No, I'm gonna give you my personal email. JFarr 6762@gmail.com. You can reach me there, or you can reach me at JFarr 100suits NYC.org.
Is that JFarr at 100suits?
Yeah, at 100suits NYC.org.
Okay, Pastor Matthew.
Yes, mine is New Horizon, NEWHORIZON, G as in gospel, M as in ministries at AOL.com. New Horizon GM at AOL.com.
Is that do you have the church right across from the community board on Farragut and Albany? Is that you?
Well, there are a few. I work trans-denominationally now. I'm working with different pastoral friends and leaderships, but they can get me at this particular email address.
I thought that was the name of a church right across from the board. All right, I want to thank you both, and thank you so much for joining us in Village. Please do, like I said, you can get the replay on YouTube. Just subscribe to our page at the Village Radio Talk Show, and then it'll come up for today's date. And thank you guys so much for participating with us. Our youth is very important, and it's not a joke when we say our youth. Our children are our future. It definitely is. So we can't have them running away. We can't have them in gangs. We can't have them involved in violence. And we need to provide for them just like we were provided for or wanted to be provided for. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you so much, both of you, for joining us in the Village.
Thank you very much.
Just a correction. May I say it's not Horizons, it's New Horizon, HORIZON, and not Horizons. So the S can come out.
Yes, he's going to change it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone have a good night.
We appreciate.
It's crazy when you think about what the lack of resources that are available to our young people and what needs to happen for them to gain a helpful life. One thing we never talked about is the fact that we as adults want our children to be better than us, not worse off.
That's true.
And we didn't get an opportunity to say that. So we're all trying to figure out ways to make them improve and become better citizens. Claudette, you had mentioned something, a post. Let me go back.
Thank you for everyone who's actually posting and writing things. We are reading some of them. We might not have read it during that time, but we are. Let me read this out. I have a communication model I've titled Family Planning. I'd like to introduce it to you as a possible pathway to better outcomes. I'm available to begin exploring that with you for our children, families, and community.
Thank you, Claudette. You have to tell us who that was addressed to. Was that addressed to one of the panelists, or was it addressed to us on the Village Radio Talk Show? If that's the case, if it's to us, you can reach out to us at villageshow30@gmail.com. You can contact me personally. You can contact one of our guests. Their emails were on the screen. So those are some real issues. We have a couple more minutes, but we have 2 minutes, right? John, what's on your mind that you want to talk about? We have R. Kelly getting 30 years and Ghislaine Maxwell. No, R. Kelly getting 30, Ghislaine getting 20, and Derek Chauvin getting 21. Which sentence do you think is fair, unfair, as from the legal argument? Which one do you think is which one?
Looking
Can't
at
hear you. Can't hear you.
those,
We can't hear you.
I believe that they were all fair. All the sentences were fair. Spending one day in jail is traumatic. When you're talking about individuals spending decades, a minimum of 2 decades in jail, and the magnitude, we always try to make a determination whether the time fits the crime. Well, you talk about Mr. Freeman, who caused the untimely death of a detective who was doing his job. He's lucky to have 30. He's lucky that he didn't get life without parole. R. Kelly, I think that R. Kelly got a reprieve when he went to that initial trial in which he was acquitted. At that point in time, he needed to depart and do what is necessary for him to continue his career and just put that behind him. Because, I believe in God doesn't make a mistake. And if he shows you the way and you don't follow that way, then whatever happens after that, it is your own just cause.
Say that again.
That occurred. As to Miss Maxwell, she got 20 years. And some might say it's too little. But for a woman of her magnitude, a woman who was amongst kings and queens, and at her age, 20 years is a lifetime. And as to Mr. Chauvin, 21 years given to Mr. Chauvin. Mr. Chauvin already has his sentence. He was already given the state sentence, and he just has a federal. No. But the judge is running those sentences concurrent. They're not consecutive. Doing 25 years, and then I got another 21 years, that's 40. But they're all running consecutive.
Who got a concurrent here?
They're all running concurrent. That is Chauvin. That's why Chauvin took the plea. Because instead of going to state court, he will spend his time in federal court. Not federal court. He will spend his time in federal prison as opposed to state prison. And police officers prefer to spend time. If they're going to do time, they'd rather spend it in federal prison as opposed to state prison.
Why?
Because of the level of scrutiny that will follow them in state court as opposed to federal court.
You know, I thank you for that explanation. I want to thank everyone for joining us today on The Village. Whether you watch, listen, shared, subscribe, and or participated, we love you and we appreciate you. Please do continue supporting us in The Village. It's all about you. It's all about the information that's there. If there are any topics, do reach out to us. And we love to do that. On behalf of Dr. Brian, John Sampson, Sophia Willissey, Andre Doman, I'm Roger Daly. Do enjoy the remainder of your weekend. God bless each and every one of you. And we'll see you next week, God's willing. Please do enjoy.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.